Okay, so I want to discuss how these ancient cultures and peoples seem to know about this, you know, Gaian reset, this Gaian shift that we are experiencing. So if we look at this X eclipse, okay, which is heavily connected to this, Gaian reset, this Gaian shift, well, the paths of these eclipses go over these pyramids in North America. Okay, so what is now the United States in Illinois? Well, in ancient America, there was pyramids that were built there. Okay, in this sort of very large city, our empire, which at some point had 40,000 people. Okay, at least in the city center, and basically these pyramids and different sort of architecture and monuments had this sort of perfect geometry and astronomical alignments. Okay. And this 2017 eclipse, right? The path goes over it. And this 2024 eclipse, the path goes over these Cahokia pyramids. Okay. Marking this X. And there was this, what they call the wood hinge, and right, it was like these wooden posts in this sort of geometrical circle which they used to track different solstices and equinoxes and that type of thing. But what's also interesting about this place is that they were also used for burials like other cultures that built pyramids. Okay, for example, there was this tablet found in one of the chambers, and right, it's has that same sort of human bird motive that is found in different cultures, right? How they said it's similar to Horus in Egypt, and they compared it to the phoenix in China or Garuda in India, and this deity Kukulkan Khan in from the Mesoamerican region, right? And what's interesting about that is this deity is, heavily connected to this pyramid found in the Yucatan, where they also have those sort of perfect astronomical alignments to the point where at every equinox the shadow moves where it looks like a snake, right? They built this snake head here, and then shadow looks like this sort of moving snake. And right, so this eclipse is part of these double X eclipses, and the path of that one goes over this pyramid as well. Okay, so it seems as if these cultures were sort of aligning to something, right? It wasn't a coincidence where these monuments and pyramids were being built. It even seems like eclipses, these eclipse paths can reflect these sort of psychic streams, right? Similar to like the jet stream, right? These sort of streams of air that sort of oscillate on planet Earth, almost this sort of bloodstream sort of feel, right? Bloodstreams of the planet. Well, what if there are these sort of psychic streams, and the paths of these eclipses sort of reflect that? And that could also explain why different events are happening in the paths of these eclipses, because what if those sort of psychic streams are growing in strength, right? And it's sort of affecting people and places. And I would even believe that these streams are typically higher in elevation, and that's why these cultures built pyramids and mounds and like increase the height so they can sort of tap into that sort of psychic energy, right? Similar to like these vortexes that people talk about. Though I do believe during this shift back to Gaia that these streams are coming back down. Okay, but again, these streams, just like how these jet streams change, maybe eclipse paths reflect these sort of oscillating psychic streams, and these cultures sort of knew about that. Okay, and they even talk about how so they use like lidar, right, which is basically these radar, to find these other mounds and plaza and pyramids, and they just kept finding this sort of very intentional design and geometry, right? It seems like they were tapping into this sort of sacred geometry, where someone assessed here where they're saying, so using this to explore the idea that Cahokia was built according to a grand master plan, right? So it seems like these cultures were kind of attuned to this sort of, you know, not just these sort of astral and cosmic sort of, cycles in a sense, but they were sort of attuning to this sort of ascension experience that we are sort of, right, we're in this sort of climaxing, reaching the apex of this sort of ascension experience, right? And these cultures were sort of attuned to that. And it says this master plan employed a standard unit of length and specific geometric shapes, which is again interesting because these cultures didn't have a written language. They didn't have a written math. So how did they do these sort of intricate architecture, and how do they make it with these sort of perfect geometric shapes and patterns, and these sort of perfect astronomical alignments without that? Okay, but again, it says this master plan employed a standard unit of length and specific geometric shapes orientated to important celestial events. In this design, the structure of the cosmos was represented. There was more, however. As I will show, the layout of Cahokia was perhaps intended to facilitate the movement of spirit entities as well as human souls between cosmic realms. Okay, so that's what we kind of connected these eclipses to, right? This sort of Gaian reset, this Gaian shift, this Gaian reawakening, where we said it's sort of connected to this Gaian portal, this access Monday of sorts, right? And it seems like this whole city was sort of tuning into this and sort of reflecting this. Cahokia functioned as an access Monday, connecting this world to the upper world and lower world. Among the spirit entities that may have moved along the Cahokian access Monday were the mythic founders of the great city. Okay, so very strong sort of connections there as well, where we can even say how that magnetic pole is shifting. It shifted to the North Pole, right, which is sometimes considered an access Monday, right? That sort of pole in the center of the Earth, where you know where it's even here it's represented this access Monday. They have the reindeer, right? And that's like that Santa Claus reindeer connection, where it's this, world tree, it's this bridge that's sort of being activated, where we sort of move between realms, right? We've been in this timeline, this matrix, this astral realm, and we're going to move out of it back to our more sort of default Gaian realm, in a sense, okay? And it seems like those cultures knew about this process or experience, right? This sort of ascension experience, okay? But lastly, what's interesting is basically there are these haplogroups, which are basically like sort of like genetic fingerprints that we can use to track different, genetic cultures in a sense. And there's this haplogroup X that is found in sort of Amerindian identified populations, okay? And there's people are kind of wondering how that has happened because this haplogroup is found in different sort of populations with historical sort of presences in like Europe and the Near East, North Africa. And they say it may have even originated with ancient Egyptian populations. So what's interesting is it's like populations that originated from them made it into like Siberia and the Beringian Strait, and it's found in sort of these American Indian identified populations in the US. Could that reflect some type of, you know, connections in how these sort of mounds and, these same sort of expressions, if you will? And then you even have that sort of, it's called haplogroup X, and it's, you know, that sort of reoccurring theme, right? This X eclipse where these pyramids, fall in this X. Okay, so basically, it seems like these cultures knew about these cycles and this ascension experience and these realms, and how this is now reflecting how we are in the apex or climax of that.